Greetings from my recording studio high in the Andes Mountains. In this video, we'll learn how to graph quadratic equations in Excel. So why learn graphing at all? Well, one, graphing is part of the mandated curriculum in New Mexico. Also, graphing provides a visual approach to learning abstract concepts. It's much easier to learn what different things in the equation do whenever you can see it actually graphed. And finally, graphing in Excel is quick and easy. And for the best benefit of this video, you should have Excel open at this time. One of the things I really like about graphing quadratic equations is that they're symmetric. And the general solution, the general equation for a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals y. And the vertex is always located at x equals negative b divided by 2a. And if we draw a vertical line through that vertex, that's called the line of symmetry. And whenever you graph, it really looks nice as if you have exactly the same thing on the right side of the line of symmetry as you have on the left-hand side of the line of symmetry. The equation that we're going to be graphing today is 1x squared plus 6x minus 5. And this is just an example. Any quadratic equation will work. So the first thing I want to do is calculate where the vertex is, the x value. And in this case, that's going to be negative 6 divided by 2 equals negative 3. And once we start generating our data, we'll want equal numbers on the left-hand side of that value as we have on the right-hand side of that value. Here's ultimately what we want to work toward in this video. We don't necessarily need the falcon, but it makes things look kind of nice. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to learn how to generate the data for this graph, for this equation that we're working on. We're going to learn how to generate a basic no-frills graph. And oftentimes that's all we need. You can just stop right there and save a little time. But it's also kind of nice to know how to add some color to your graph. We'll learn how to add axis labels. Axis labels are things like this. The chart title, we'll learn how to do all of that. We'll learn how to generate data labels. When I'm talking about data labels, I'm talking about the points on the graph, the x and y coordinates of each point on that graph. And finally, we'll learn how to add color to your graph. You may want to watch your eyes for a second because we're going to go to Excel and that screen is pretty white, pretty bright. And it looks like this. Each of these little boxes inside this grid here are called cells. And this first cell right here is cell A1. And I'm just going to go ahead and enter a number in there, -8. And then I'm going to come down to A2, click on that, and add a number -7. I'm going to click out of that, and then I'm going to left click on these two, and whenever I do that, there's a little black box right here at the lower right hand corner of those two highlighted cells. I'm going to left click on that and just drag that down. There's my -3, that's going to be my vertex, and I'm going to count on up until I have the same number of cells above that value as I do below that value, and that's that right there. And when I do that, Excel automatically populates the remaining cells in that column. That's a nice feature. Now I'm going to go to column B, and column B is where I'm going to type in the equation that we're going to graph. And to start that off, we start with an equal sign, and now I have to tell it what number I want to work on. And to do that in Excel, I just come over and left click on the cell that I want this equation to work on, and it will automatically populate that cell into the equation. Now I want to square that, and to square a number in Excel, you shift 6, and that gives you that caret, and I want to square it, and I'll put a 2. Now I want to add 6 times A1, so I'll type in an addition sign, type in the number 6, and I have to tell it to multiply, and to multiply that's going to be shift 8. That's that little star. And then I'll left click on A1 again to tell Excel to fetch that number and put in there. And finally we're going to subtract 5 from everything that we've done so far. At that point, I come over and hit this check mark to tell Excel that I'm finished with that equation. And whenever I do that, Excel automatically calculates the value of this equation using that number. There's that little black box again in the lower right hand corner of that cell. I'll left click on that and just drag it down. And then Excel makes all those calculations for you. It's nice and quick. You don't have to do that every time using your calculator. Saves you a lot of time. So now I'm going to left click in the upper left hand cell and drag down to highlight all of that data. And now I need to tell Excel I want to graph that, so I come up to the ribbon up here to insert, left click on that, and it gives me a lot of options, but the options that I'm really interested in is charts. And for us, this chart format in the lower right hand corner of those 6 is the one that's most appropriate for us. So we'll click on that, and that's called a scatter plot. Now we have several options. I want a nice smooth curve with data points in it. As I move through all of these options, you'll see the graph below change. Here's one with no line with the data points. Here's a nice smooth curve with the data points. Nice smooth curve without the data points, and it's your option. But for this video, I'm going to choose this option here. I'll go ahead and make the graph larger. And whenever that graph comes up, we have 3 icons off to the upper right hand side, this one that looks like a plus sign is the one that we really want to work with right now. And whenever we click on that, it gives us all kinds of options for what elements, what things that we want in our graph besides just that line. The axes, that's the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis, that's a good one to have. Axis titles, whenever I highlight that, notice how the graph changes. It adds a text box to the vertical axis and to the horizontal axis. Those are nice to have. I'll click on that. Chart title is at the top. I can unclick that, but it's typically good to have that so we know what we're graphing. We've got grid lines. We can do a legend. I'll move off of that. Watch the graph to see what happens. Off to the right hand side of the graph, you'll see the legend appear. Those are all options for you. One of the things I always like to have are data labels. Those are the values of the points. Whenever you click on this, you have some options. You can center them around the point. You can have them left of the point, to the right of the point, above the point, below, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that and leave them where they show up. Now, whenever we do that, that gives us the Y value of that. Now I can left click on the data label and I get these options, and it says format data labels. And then it gives me these options over to the far right hand side. I want both the X and the Y values, so I'll click on that. I'm finished with that frame. Go ahead and close that. Click out. Now I have both the X and the Y values. At this time, I'll go up and left click to highlight the text box for chart title. Then I'll rapidly click 3 times, 1, 2, 3. And now it's going to allow me to change chart title to whatever I want. And I'm going to type in first quadratic equation graph. Then I can click out of that and it freezes it. Now I want to change the default axis title. I'll left click once to highlight the text box, rapidly click, left click 3 times, 1, 2, 3. Clicked a little bit too many times, and then I'm going to make that X values. Might be a good time for me to change the font. Left click quickly 3 times, and I can change the font from 10. It gives me lots of options. You can scroll through those and get a size that you prefer. I'll go ahead and do 16. I'm going to bold it. Click out of it. That looks nice. Then I'm going to go over to the Y-axis title. Left click once to activate the text box. Left click 3 times. And I'll do the same thing. Change the font to 16 and bold it. So I'm in pretty good shape so far. Let's kind of review what I did. We generated the data that we needed. We went to insert and told it to put in a scatter plot. It gave us a no frills scatter plot, and we started modifying that to the way that we like it. We changed the chart title by left clicking on the text box and then rapidly clicking 3 times to select the text that was in there and then made the modifications. We did exactly the same thing to the x-axis title, and then we did the same thing to the y-axis title, except I didn't change the title. That's done now. So there's not a whole lot left for us to do. What I would like to do, I think, is maybe put some color in it. This area that I'm in right now, outlined by this grid, is called the plot area. I'm going to right click on that, and it gives me a lot of options. I'm going to come down to the bottom of that dialog box and left click Format Plot Area. And when I do that, it opens this pane over here. And I think I'm going to click Picture or Texture Fill. And it defaulted with that. I still have some options. Here's an option that says Picture Source. I'll go ahead and select that. If you have pictures on your computer that you want to put in there, you can select it, a file from your computer. I'm just going to go to Stock Images. And it will populate it with a lot of different pictures. I don't need the falcon this time. I'll try something else. I think I'll go with the thistle or whatever that is. Left click on that and then insert. And that puts that in there. The area outside of that picture is called the chart area. I'll just go ahead and left click on that. And I have all these options. No fill, I can leave it the way it is. Or I can do something else, picture or texture fill. I'll click on that. And it's going to give me some options. I'll come down to texture. Maybe. And then click on this down arrow, and it gives me those options. I think I'll collect these fossils and put in there. Everything's looking good. So I'm pretty much finished with that now. So I can at that point, you can see that the whole thing is selected. I could right click on that and it gives me the option to copy. So I'll go ahead and copy that. And then I'm going to move back over to PowerPoint. There's my original. Now I'm going to right click on that and paste. And there it is. You're all done with it. Looking good. I hope you had Excel open the whole time. If you didn't, you can go back a little bit later, replay the video pane by pane, step by step, step by painful step, and generate the graph that you like best. So that's about it. A lot of information there. Left clicking, right clicking. It just takes a little bit of practice. Just persevere, and you can make some beautiful graphs like this. So in summary, Excel makes it really, really easy and quick to graph quadratic equations. Graphing equations helps you see what making modifications to the equation does to the graph. It's something that I wish I had when I was in the 7th or 8th grade. Even in college, we didn't have that. So good luck with it. Use it to your advantage. And remember that the right click enables editing. The right click is your friend whenever you want to edit anything on your graph. So here at the end of the day, there's only one thing left to say, and that is that's all, folks. I don't know why I keep doing that. But it's, folks, be safe.